Why did the FBI identify Epstein-connected individuals and then never question them? That was the question sitting inside a single manila envelope when Jared Moscowitz walked into a congressional hearing. The document showed names flagged for follow-up investigation. The interviews never happened, and when Kash Patel was asked why, the FBI director froze, and Congressman Jared Moscowitz knew it the moment it started. Because inside that manila envelope was something the FBI had created, filed, and quietly left untouched. A document that put specific names, specific connections, and a specific unanswered question directly in front of the most powerful law enforcement official in America. Stay with this. Because what that envelope contained doesn't just implicate Patel. It implicates the entire system that allowed those files to sit untouched for years. But to understand why those 47 seconds destroyed something that 2 hours of polished testimony had carefully built, you need to understand the man sitting across from Moskowitz. Patel had already navigated the full first half of that hearing with practiced ease. 2 hours of pressure, procedural sparring, hostile questions from Democrats, comfortable questions from Republicans. He had handled all of it. His posture was relaxed. His legal team behind him looked almost bored. In Patel's mind, the clock was running out and he was winning. Every bureaucratic non-answer was another minute burned. He had made an art form out of sounding cooperative while committing to absolutely nothing. Then Jared Moscowitz picked up the microphone. Moskowitz doesn't perform. That's what veteran Hill watchers will tell you. He doesn't ask questions for applause. He asks questions to generate answers. And when the answers don't come, he makes the absence itself the entire point. He placed the manila envelope flat on the table. No theatrics, no waving it for cameras. Just set it down quietly, the way a chess player places the piece that ends the game. He looked directly at Patel and asked one question. Had the director personally reviewed the Epstein investigation files currently held by his bureau? The pause that followed was not a man collecting his thoughts. He didn't look down at his notes. He didn't ask for clarification. He simply sat there staring ahead as the silence stretched longer and longer. Anyone who has spent time watching congressional testimony knows the difference. A man collecting his thoughts shifts his gaze, reaches for water, breathes. Patel did none of those things. He went completely still. The stillness of frantic internal calculation, the arithmetic of a man trying to determine exactly how much the person across from him already knows. A committee staffer near the back of the room looked up from her laptop. Even the stenographer briefly stopped typing. Reporters in the gallery leaned forward almost at the same moment. The stenographer paused mid-sentence. Reporters in the press gallery leaned forward almost simultaneously. 47 seconds on national television. Then Patel spoke, and what came out was worse than silence. He offered language about being aware of documents related to various investigations and the Bureau maintaining appropriate protocols for sensitive materials. Moskowitz didn't blink. His voice didn't shift. He said simply, "That is not what I asked. I asked if you personally reviewed the Epstein files, yes or no." Patel's jaw tightened. He said he could not discuss the specifics of open or closed investigations in an open session hearing. And that's when Moskowitz reached into the envelope. But what he pulled out wasn't what anyone expected. Not leaked material, not classified documents obtained through back channels. It was a publicly available federal court filing from the Southern District of New York, sitting accessible in federal court records for anyone willing to look. The filing referenced a 2019 FBI internal summary document, case reference number included, that the Bureau itself had acknowledged existed in prior court proceedings. The document cataloged individuals who had been formally flagged for follow-up investigation, and then it documented something else. Those follow-up contacts never happened. The people on that list were never questioned. These weren't random names pulled from a rumor mill. According to the filing, they were individuals FBI investigators themselves had identified for additional scrutiny. The Bureau had already done the work of finding them. The unanswered question was why the work stopped there. The investigation simply stopped. Moskowitz held up the filing and let the room absorb it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he said, "Director Patel, your Bureau's own 2019 summary identifies individuals flagged as requiring follow-up investigation. Those contacts never happened. The investigation stopped. Why were those flagged individuals never questioned?" The color in Patel's face shifted. Not dramatically. He was too trained for that. But enough. The tension moving through his jaw, the slight change around his eyes. His legal team exchanged a look that lasted less than a second, but said everything. This was not the question they had prepared for. Not because it was a trap, but because it was built entirely from documents the FBI itself had created and acknowledged. There was no angle of attack, no way to call it fabricated. The filing was sitting right there on the table between them. Patel attempted a recovery. He said the Bureau, under previous leadership, had made various operational decisions and that he remained committed to transparency going forward. Moskowitz cut him off before the sentence finished landing. I'm not asking about previous leadership. I'm asking about documents your Bureau holds right now, today. Will the individuals flagged in your own summary ever be questioned? Patel said he could not make specific commitments in an open hearing setting. And here is where something in that room permanently changed. Because Moskowitz didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice or launch into a speech. He said, "Then I want the record to reflect exactly what just occurred. The director of the FBI was asked whether individuals identified in his own bureau's documentation will ever face questioning, and he declined to answer." He set his papers down, calm, deliberate. The envelope still open in front of him, but the envelope wasn't empty yet. His second document struck deeper. He asked Patel about the chain of custody for all physical evidence gathered from Epstein's properties: the Manhattan residence, the Palm Beach estate, the private island facility in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Had all of it been fully cataloged, secured, and preserved? Patel said yes. To the best of his knowledge, standard protocols had been followed. Moskowitz nodded slowly, the nod of someone who already knows exactly what comes next. He read from a second document, also public, also court accessible, a 2021 report from the FBI's own Inspector General, containing in the Bureau's own official language a finding that evidence handling procedures in high-profile cases had not consistently met Bureau standards, and that documentation gaps existed in files from the 2019 to 2020 period. Moskowitz looked up from the page and said quietly, "Your own Inspector General identified documentation gaps covering exactly the period we are discussing. So when you tell me evidence protocols were followed, are you saying that under oath?" Patel shifted visibly in his chair. He said the Inspector General report addressed broad systemic issues, and he could not speak to specific cases without reviewing the relevant files. Moskowitz said, "Then I am formally requesting, on the record, that you review those files and provide this committee with a written status report on all related evidence within 30 days. Patel said he would take that request under advisement, 3 words. And every person in that hearing room with more than 6 months of Washington experience felt the temperature drop when he said them. Under advisement doesn't mean yes. It doesn't mean maybe. It means this request is about to dissolve into bureaucratic fog while everyone waits for the news cycle to move on. It is the institutional language of someone who has no intention of complying, but won't say so directly on camera. Moskowitz recognized it immediately. He said, "The formal request has been made. The refusal to commit is itself now part of this record." He closed the envelope. His time had expired. He didn't need more. Because here is what Moskowitz had accomplished. And this is the part that matters long after the hearing ends. He hadn't accused Patel of a crime, hadn't waived classified documents or made allegations that could be dismissed as partisan. He had placed the FBI's own paperwork on a table and asked the FBI director to explain the gaps in the FBI's own work. The 2019 summary still exists. The flagged names still exist. The Inspector General's documented failures covering that exact window still exist. And now, sitting permanently in the congressional record alongside all of it is Kash Patel's 47-second silence and his under advisement. That record doesn't disappear. Every journalist following this story has it. Every future investigator who picks up this thread will find it waiting. Every legal proceeding that eventually touches this network will encounter that moment. A sitting FBI director asked directly whether his bureau's own flagged individuals would ever face a single question, who looked at the camera and said nothing for 47 seconds. This is also not an isolated incident. Patel has now been asked across multiple congressional hearings about protected names, investigative gaps, and evidence handling. The answer is always the same: deflection, protocol, cannot discuss in open session. A wall that holds this consistently across this many questions from this many different members of Congress is not holding by accident. Something is being protected. The documented gaps in that 2019 summary didn't appear by accident either. Investigations don't stop themselves. Moskowitz left that hearing room with an empty envelope and a full record. Patel left with something far heavier, a silence now attached to his name permanently in the federal archive. So here is what I want you to think about and answer below. The FBI's own documentation identified specific individuals connected to Epstein's network who required follow-up, and those contacts never happened. The current director refused on camera to commit to completing that work. The 2021 Inspector General confirmed evidence gaps in exactly that time period. So the question isn't whether those names exist in those files. They do. The question is, who decided they would stay there? Drop your answer below, because that decision didn't make itself. And in Washington, where everything is eventually forgotten, the things recorded under oath have a different shelf life. Moskowitz didn't just ask questions that day. He built a wall around Patel's silence, using Patel's own bureau's documents as the bricks. That wall isn't coming down, and somewhere inside the FBI's filing system, in a case reference number that now lives in the congressional record, the names on that flagged list are still waiting. The investigation stopped, the files didn't, and neither will the questions. The hearing is over. The silence is permanent. And the only thing louder than 47 seconds of nothing is a congressional record that nobody can erase.